nothing but the truth. First, a fact. India's National Testing Agency, or the NTA, is the second largest exam conducting agency in the world, next only to China. Unfortunately, that record is not something that the NTA should be proud about, especially with leaks and lapses disrupting 4 major national exams in the past fortnight, and it has put the future of millions of our students into jeopardy. Not to mention, of course, the immense anxiety it has caused to parents as well. Hello, I am Raj Chengappa of India Today, and in this episode of Nothing But the Truth, we will analyze what went wrong with NTA's testing system and what needs to be done to fix it. But to understand the issue and the situation, just a quick recap as to why things have come to such a sorry pass. It all started with the national examination for admittance to the approximately 110,000 seats, 110,000 seats in 708 medical colleges across the country. Now, this is an annual test and is called the National Eligibility Cum Entrance Test Undergraduate, or NEET-UG, but more familiarly known as NEET itself. This is conducted by the NTA, or the National Testing Agency. That is a central agency that goes into it, and it is the single gateway to all of India's 700-odd medical colleges. In May this year, over 2.3 million students appeared for the test all across the country. The competition was extremely high, and you can imagine, for every seat, there are 211 candidates vying for it. Now, the NEET is a pen and paper examination, much like the CBSE high school examination. It has what is known as, and I'm giving you these details because many of us must have done exams decades ago, just to understand what the exam process is about, and many of you all might know it, the younger would certainly do. It has what is known, NEET has what is known as multiple choice questions that usually has around exactly 200 questions, of which 180 have to be answered in 200 minutes. That's about 3 hours and 20 minutes. Now, each question has multiple options for answers, and the candidate has to check the right one. So, on an average, that's about a minute to answer each question. So, it's a race against time. The maximum marks one can get is 720 marks. So, you get 4 marks for each correct answer, but you lose 1 mark for each incorrect answer. So, NEET, as I said, is a really tough exam that tests the students' knowledge and aptitude across several disciplines, and you have to be super fast and therefore have command over the subjects that you're dealing in. So far, so good. But when the NEET results came out on June 4th, and if you recall, that is the day the general election results were also announced, there were many surprises that raised suspicions about its credibility. Just to give you an idea, over the years, if you take from 2016 onwards, that's almost 8 years, if you just take the average, there were only 2 or 3 who got the full 720 marks for NEET. But this year, I mean in 2023, for instance, there were only 3 students who got it. But this year, 2024, 67 of them got 100% marks of the 720 and topped the list. 6 toppers were from one exam center in Bahadurgarh in Haryana, that's not too far from Delhi, and they had seat numbers, curiously, in the same sequence, and apparently had not done particularly well in the class 12 boards. But what raised even more concerns was an analysis done by, as the India Today Data Intelligence Unit showed, that in 2023, if a person got 600 marks, last year, if a person got 600 marks in NEET, their rank was 28,619. And they would have easily gotten admission into the college, into a medical college. But in 2024, this year, those who got 600 marks were ranked at 80,468, making it very difficult for them to get admission. I told you earlier, there are only about 110 medical colleges, and particularly to get admission to their preferred option, though in the past, such a score would have got them easily into it. Now, another anomaly was that, strangely this time, grace marks were arbitrarily awarded to 1,563 students who are said to have lost time during the examinations for various reasons, including delay in distribution of the question paper at the center they were taking the exam, or they had written wrong answers due to a printing error in an earlier version of a textbook. Now, irregularities were also reported in several states, including Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Bihar, that indicated seriously that the question paper had been leaked in advance to some centers in these states. The local police then got into the act and conducted raids and arrested over 24 people for alleged involvement in paper leak or other malpractices. These included many culprits from the so-called solver gang. Now, this is a notorious mafia that runs a racket for leaking question papers across the country much in advance to those students who are willing to pay a huge price. Now, initially, the Modi government, which had just been sworn in for a third term, talked of it being a localized issue, local to certain states and not national. But then it blew up on their face when the question paper of another major entrance exam was found to have leaked. This was called the University Grants Commission National Eligibility Test, or UGC NET, which is a test that determines the eligibility for college and university level assistant professorships apart from research fellowships. Now, the UGC NET or NET exam was taken by 1 million candidates on June 18th. But within 24 hours later, the NTA cancelled that test. And the reason given was that the central government got information that the question paper had been leaked the day before the test on the darknet and was even circulated on the social media site called Telegram. Now, apprehending the worst, the Union Education Ministry decided to postpone another major examination, the CSIR NET. I'm not going to get into the expansion of it, but it's the Council of Scientific and Industrial Relations National Entrance Test for lectureships, which had 1.75 lakh candidates that were to take the test. And there was another test that was postponed, but clearly the entire examination system was not just a mess, but there were serious doubts being cast about NTA's ability, the National Testing Agency's ability to conduct examinations fairly. Students all across the country began protesting. Many of them went to the courts, including the Supreme Court, to have the NEET exam cancelled and possibly redone. The Supreme Court then bunched all the petitions together from not only the states, but the writ petitions that were filed with it, and said it would hear them on July 8th. Meanwhile, it reordered the test of the 1,563 students who had been given grace marks arbitrarily, but the court stopped short of cancelling the main NEET test and said the counselling process would continue till it decided what needs to be done after hearing all the cases. So that's where the NEET story rests at the moment. Meanwhile, the opposition lashed out at the NTA, including in Parliament, and started agitations across the country and put the Modi government on the back foot. Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan then stepped in to quell the rising tide of protest. The NTA director, the National Testing Agency Director General, was replaced, and a high-power committee chaired by former ISRO chairman Professor K. Radhakrishnan was set up by the government. Now, this committee was to go into all aspects of NTA and come out with recommendations to ensure error-free conduct of examinations, all this within 2 months. Meanwhile, the government got the Central Bureau of Investigation, or the CBI, to take over the investigation of malpractices that had been reported across several states. Along with my colleague Anilesh Mahajan, I had a long interview with Union Education Minister Dharmendra Pradhan on this subject, which appears in the India Today magazine. And he summed up and he told India Today, and I'm quoting him, "When it comes to entrance tests, there are no shortcuts. We need to make them 100% foolproof. Looking into that, we have formed a very high-profile, high-level reform committee. We are very clear in our intentions. Our government is committed to zero error." Close quotes. That's what Dharmendra Pradhan told us. And he had also assured students that he would take all precautions, all actions necessary to ensure that their future, their security in terms of exams would be taken care of. Now, let us examine what is the real issue. And at the center of this exam mess is The fact is certainly the NTA, which was created in 2017, ironically, precisely to streamline and modernize the conduct of India's common entrance examination. Now, NTA has been put in charge since 2017 of about 15 entrance and fellowship examinations altogether, and now handles, as I said, 12.3 million individual exam givers, and this was in 2023. It could have gone up this year. So where does the reform process need to begin, and what needs to be done for NTA and the entire examination system to prevent the kind of leaks we saw and bring the confidence back on the way the students looked at the NTA? First, a bit about the NTA. The NTA was modeled on the Educational Testing Service, ETS of the United States, which many of you all who have taken this would know, which administers tests like the Scholastic Assessment Test, SAT, very, very famous, the American College Test or ACT, and the Graduate Record Examinations called GRE. However, unlike the ETS, the American ETS, which has more than 200 permanent staff members, the NTA operates with just over 24 permanent employees in its Delhi office. It is clearly short-staffed. It depends on officials on deputation from other government departments and temporary employees on contract. Now, this massive understaffing has forced NTA to outsource critical functions such as paper setting, distribution, and data security to private technical service providers and other external experts. Of course, let us not discredit NEET. It conducts a whole lot of other examinations like the JEE, the Joint Entrance Examination for Engineering, and over the years, in the last 7 or 8 years, has performed well on certain fronts. But there is serious lacuna building, and that's what we're going to talk about. Let us look at the NEET exam itself, because we don't want to damn the entire agency, but the NEET exam is now under crucial examination, and under the fact that there's been so many leaks and problems with it, and the storm that it has created, let us examine that and see what is the real problem that is happening. One of my colleague, Kaushik Deka, who has done an in-depth cover story in India Today magazine, says that there are 11 points of vulnerability in the NEET exam. Now, this covers, and it's somewhat commonsensical, that it covers the entire life cycle of the question paper setting, from the time it's set by subject experts to its storage and transportation to the examination center, and then the answers that are given and the answer papers then collected and the evaluation of the answers. Now, I've condensed that 11 vulnerable points to 4 major points, and let's discuss each of these 4 points because it'll give you an understanding. And I said it's not rocket science. There are fairly simple things that need to be done, places that reform could be given. And let's start with the first one, is the question paper setting itself. Now, according to what is happening right now, subject experts are asked to create a pool of questions, which are then reviewed and categorized by experienced educators and examiners to ensure that they meet the required standards of difficulty, relevance, and covers the syllabus comprehensively. Now, NEET's problems stem from the fact that it is what is called a pen and paper test. You use a pen and you write the test, unlike in other tests that could be computer-based, and therefore, experts say more open to vulnerabilities because of the logistics than say like what the JEE or the Joint Entrance Exam for engineering graduates has. Now, the JEE is a computer-based test and hence supposedly less susceptible to logistical lapses. Of course, it does have technical glitches and occasionally impersonation cases, but these are generally less compared to the issues of what NEET faces. Now, I spoke to Union Minister Dharmendra Pradhan, and he said, I asked him, why doesn't the NEET move from pen-to-paper test to computer-based testing? And he said, look, one of the issues is logistics. India has about over 3 lakh such centers, computer-based centers, and clearly inefficient to conduct NEET, because NEET, as I said, has over 2.3 million, and it will require several settings. The JEE, the engineering graduates, do have 1.4 million students, but that test is conducted over twice a year and is spread over 5 to 6 days. Now, Dharmendra Pradhan, the minister, pointed out that the CBSE, being a pen and paper thing, has had no glitches. I mean, we have had the CBSE, which is a major exam for a higher secondary school, that's 12th standard, and by and large, that has been error-free and without glitches. So he says if that can be done, which has almost the same number as what NEET has, therefore that shouldn't be a question. So he says it's like, Pradhan says it's like comparing apples and oranges, and then goes on to add both are juicy to eat, so you can have either of these. And in the CBT format, that is a computer-based testing format, the question paper and answer keys are encrypted and saved separately. Now this could be one of the things that the NEET could move towards, which is once they built the capacity for computer-based testing, they could move towards this kind of a thing where it eliminates a lot of anomalies that have risen during NEET, where the entire process, the question paper is automated. You could have a vast bank of questions which are meticulously developed and categorized over time. And these encrypted question papers reaches every exam center and is decrypted only when the candidate clicks on it. That's the way the G exams are done. This is something that the NEET could follow. Also, unlike NEET, there is a huge involvement of the faculty of, say, the Indian Institute of Technology, professors and others for setting the exam questions for the joint entrance examination for engineering. Now, this is a good practice and the NEET should follow, and maybe the expert committee could go into the whole question of how the question papers are set, why did the anomalies arise, did they really cover the entire gamut, is it fair to the students, or is there problems that is there? That's what the expert committee under Professor Radhakrishnan should look at. Then let us go to the second big issue. I talked of the first big issue itself, which is the question paper setting, and there are now questions being asked about that itself. Now, the second issue is, okay, you've got the questions ready, but you have to do, because it is a pen and paper test, you have to print these question papers, you have to seal them, transport them to the exam centers where it is done. So once these finalized question papers are printed under strict security measures, they have to be stored at secure facilities, very much like the way we would store our voting boxes that are there for our general election. And these would then hopefully minimize the risk of leaks, because this is exactly where you have this thing. When I said voting boxes, I must correct myself. The EVMs, you have these huge storage facilities as soon as you vote. That has to be secure. Now, printed question papers are sealed in, that is the procedure, are sealed in tamper-evident envelopes or containers equipped with multiple layers of security, including barcodes, and stored in secure locations, and supposedly under CCTV surveillance, and are guarded by security personnel. That's the standard operation procedure. The sealed question papers are transported in trunks to examination centers with armed escorts, and there's supposedly GPS tracking systems that are used to monitor the transportation process in real time. But here again, as the NEET investigations have shown, there were several anomalies which the police are investigating, including the question papers being opened in advance. Apparently, it could have been hijacked in between, and that is being investigated in certain centers. I'm not talking of the entire thing. In 2 or 3 states, there has been anomalies that are there that needs to be studied and to be seen whether this in any way endangers the entire testing system that's there. Now let's come, having looked at the question paper setting, we have looked at how they're going to be transported to it, then look at the examination center and the precautions that need to be taken there. Now here, tests are conducted in 4,750 centers across 571 cities in India and 14 abroad. Now that's a huge apparatus to put together all in one day. Now, on the day of the examination, the procedure is that the sealed question papers are opened in the presence of designated officials and students. A detailed log is maintained. All examination centers are supposed to be under CCTV monitoring and live feed, transmitted to what is called the Central Control Room at the NTA headquarters in New Delhi. But this is something that is supposed to be the procedure, but this time there were many anomalies that were observed. I'm only giving you one. Around 186 centers did not have 2 working CCTV cameras as mandated to be installed in each exam room. There were other anomalies that were noticed, and those gave certain worry as to whether the protocols that were there to ensure security at the exam hall and the center were being followed, or whether there was any violation. Let's make it clear, this is a mammoth effort that is going on, and there would be problems, but the effort has to make sure that it is zero-free, because students' lives depend on it. Students' future depend on it. We cannot have a system, especially in India, where we are so advanced in terms of computer software and other things, that we have a problem of one of our major testing systems. It doesn't speak well of the way we conduct our examination systems. Now let's come to the fourth, which is evaluation of the answer sheets. Now here, what is called these optical mark recognition sheets, or OMR sheets, are scanned through high-speed OMR machines. The scanned data is then processed and scores are calculated based on the answer keys. Now, results are supposedly compiled, verified, and then published on the official NTA website. Now, this is again the standard operating procedure, but as we have seen, there were several serious anomalies, and these need to be gone into, because you did have the problem of grace marks being given, and the other issues that had been investigated in terms of how certain number of people, the high number of 720 marks, 10% marks that were there, 67 of them, a huge lift off in terms of how many people were getting above 600, which was far, far more than what was there earlier, and I gave you that example of it. Now let's look at one final point, and this is what necessitated the switch to NEET in the first place. Now, before the NTA came into existence in 2017, it was the Central Board of Secondary Education, or the CBSE, which I had mentioned earlier, that conducted medical and engineering entrance examinations in India. It was called the All India Pre-Medical, Pre-Dental Entrance Test in its earlier form, and this was a national level common medical entrance exam that existed alongside multiple other entrance exams conducted by respective states. So a student clearing AIPMT could take direct admission into medical colleges under the central government, and also avail of the 15% quota for non-resident students in every state medical college. And what the NTA did when it came into it was that it sorted out the problems of many students, because supposing you were in the south and you wanted to apply for a college in Karnataka and in Kerala and say Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, I'm saying, given the proximity of these states to each other, and you were keen on studying there, you would have to do 4 entrance tests, because the states had their own test. When the NTA brought in the NEET, that eliminated all these state tests and made it into a single test, so that students didn't have to do multiple tests. So that was a very fair process, or a logical process towards moving towards it, and it enabled, actually lessened the burden for students. So it is a welcome step when it happened. Now, while all this facilitated students to have a single exam that is there, many states, however, saw it as an undermining of India's federal structure. Tamil Nadu, for instance, persistently opposed NEET and favored the state policy of basing medical college admissions on high school performance. They in fact set up an expert committee led by Justice A.K. Rajan, who found that rural students and those from Tamil medium schools faced a disproportionate disadvantage when it came to NEET. So the study showed that from 2017 to 2021, the admission rate of Tamil medium students in medical colleges plummeted from 15% to a mere 1.6%. And another problem arose. Rural students' admission fell from 62% to 50%. Now, the Chief Minister Stalin has raised this issue in the past and said that what the NEET does is favor the urban students and those who are good at English or Hindi, but does not allow, say, in Tamil Nadu, for instance, the rural students to get it, and that admission has fallen, so the poor and those who live in rural areas do not get an equal opportunity, and he wanted the NEET not to be implemented. Now, I asked Dharmendra Pradhan, the Union Minister, about this issue, and he dismisses the criticism, pointing out that how the NEET topper in 2023 was in fact a girl from a Tamil Nadu village who had studied under the Tamil Nadu board itself. And he, of course, then went on to say that he has made a study or the government has made a study to show that, in fact, the admission from rural and semi-rural areas or semi-urban areas into NEET, or those who have succeeded in NEET, have gone up over the years, and this is not an accurate representation of the fact. Of course, these will now be looked into to see, since you have a reforms committee that's there, is something that the Radhakrishnan committee can look into it, but experts say a return to the state level entrance examinations or the abolition of NTA itself, as many people have been demanding, is not likely to solve the problem. There were, of course, let's not forget, irregularities in earlier entrance exams too, including the JEE and the various important ones, the National Law Aptitude Test, just to name a few. Papers have been leaked in state board examinations almost every year across the country. So there also reforms need to be done, not just for the NTA exams, but exams all across. And we've had recruitment scams, as you've seen, across the board. One needs to look at these and correct it, because this is not a good thing for India. Now, one of the good things or the positive things that have happened is that several state governments have enacted strict laws against those found guilty of paper leaks and cheating. But this doesn't seem to have helped. So the central government has stepped in recently and passed the Public Examination Prevention of Unfair Means Act of 2024, which lists 15 actions, including leakage of question papers or answers, as unfair means, and offenders face up to 10 years in jail and a fine of ₹1 crore. Now, harsher punishment has also been prescribed in the cases of organized paper leaks, like what we talked of the solver gangs. So there is at least punitive action, serious punitive action, including jail sentences and heavy fines for those who think that they can break the system and manipulate the system. But let's not forget, these laws do not guarantee an end to the paper leaks, as action can be taken only after the leak. That means there is no escaping the fact that the NTA itself needs a major structural overhaul. We had pointed out all the 4 or 5 areas that they're highly vulnerable, and these need to be strengthened, not just for the NEET, but across all tests. And we certainly, all of us certainly look forward to the Radhakrishnan Committee to come out with radical reform. Why? Because it is vital for India and the future of its young that these tests are fair, transparent, and without error. There is no doubt that without these corrections, we need to enter into what the Viksit Bharat, or a developed country, or to be a global superpower. All these means that the fundamental, those who are entering jobs, those who are entering colleges, those who are going in for education, these systems need to be made error-free. They must be made 100% foolproof, as the minister promised. We are hoping that these things would happen. Thank you for listening to this episode of Nothing But the Truth. For an in-depth cover story on the issue, do read the latest issue of India Today, done by my colleague Kaushik Deka, where he examines all aspects of it. I look forward to having you with me next week. Nothing but the truth.